There is a certain kind of courage that doesn't make headlines. It doesn't come from a soldier on a battlefield or a firefighter running into a burning building. Sometimes, it comes from an ordinary citizen sitting at a county fair booth with a laptop and a decision that would change his life forever. This is the story of what happens when a citizen tries to expose a flaw in the system, and the system turns around and tries to destroy him. Go back. November 2020. The presidential election, Wisconsin. Millions of voters cast their ballots. And when it was over, when the dust settled and the networks called the race, a large number of Wisconsin citizens walked away from their screens with something they couldn't shake. A feeling, not partisan, not political, just a deep, gnawing sense that something had not gone right. They weren't conspiracy theorists. They weren't radicals. They were neighbors, business owners, veterans, teachers. People who had voted in elections their whole lives and felt for the first time like the process had slipped out of their hands. They started asking questions. They were told to sit down. They kept asking. They were called dangerous. They kept asking anyway. And eventually, under enormous, sustained public pressure, those questions reached the desk of Robin Vos, the powerful Speaker of the Wisconsin State Assembly. Now let's be clear about who Robin Vos is. This was not a man who had championed election integrity. In fact, before the 2024 election, Vos had publicly stated, on the record, that he would do whatever he could to keep Donald Trump off the Wisconsin ballot. This was not a neutral referee, but the pressure from his own constituents was too great to ignore. Citizens were demanding an investigation. They were showing up. They were calling. They were organized. And Vos, reluctantly, some say cynically, agreed to open one. His first idea? Use retired police officers. A quiet, low-profile look that would produce little, threaten no one, and go away quickly. Patriots saw through it immediately.
If you think for 1 second that this dog and pony show put together by Assembly Speaker Vos is going to be done in the light of day, no, it will be done behind closed doors. That is not acceptable to us. We want to watch.
They pushed harder, and in June of 2021, Vos appointed a name that would become central to this entire story.
Do you think there was widespread fraud or just a few instances?
I think there was widespread fraud, and I think we are going to see more and more data that comes out as Justice Gableman continues his investigation.
Former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman. Michael Gableman was not a political lightweight. He had served on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. He understood the law. He understood elections, and he took this assignment seriously. Perhaps more seriously than Robin Vos ever intended. Gableman and his team dug in. They examined the processes. They reviewed the evidence. They looked at absentee ballot procedures, the role of outside money funneled into Wisconsin's election infrastructure, Dropbox usage, and the conduct of the Wisconsin Elections Commission itself. What they found disturbed them. After months of investigation, Gableman's report didn't hedge. It didn't soften its conclusions to protect the powerful. His recommendation was direct. Wisconsin's 2020 election deserved a hard look at decertification. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming.
And $676,000 of taxpayer money. But Republican-hired lawyer Michael Gableman made his 2020 election report public today, with a repeatedly debunked claim that lawmakers could decertify the election results.
I believe the legislature ought to take a very hard look at the option of decertification of the 2020 Wisconsin presidential election.
For him to bring that up again really puts him in the fringe within the Republican Party.
Gableman's decertification claim has been shot down by legislative lawyers and legal scholars who say state lawmakers can't overturn the election. And even the final line of Gableman's 136-page report states that it would not change who was president. But Gableman's report pressed on, suggesting state lawmakers should take control over certifying elections and dismantle and eliminate the State Elections Commission, which currently oversees Wisconsin elections. Leaders in both parties dismissed that notion. And it's unclear at this point whether lawmakers will follow up on any of Gableman's recommendations or whether his investigation will continue or come to an end with today's report.
The press didn't debate his findings. They didn't examine his evidence point by point. They attacked him. His reputation was targeted. His character was questioned. His legal standing was challenged in court. Sympathetic media outlets ran story after story, painting Gableman not as an investigator who had raised legitimate questions, but as a rogue actor, a crank, a danger to democracy. The message to the public was clear. Don't look at what he found. Look at what we say he is. And then Robin Voss, the man who hired Gableman, the man who commissioned the investigation, showed his true hand. In August 2022, Voss fired Gableman, called him publicly an embarrassment. Years later, during a retirement interview, Voss would say that hiring Gableman was the worst decision he made in his career. Think about that. The worst thing he did was let someone look for the truth. Think about that. The worst thing he did was let someone look for the truth. While Gableman was conducting his investigation, other citizens were asking their own questions. One of them was Harry Wait. Harry Wait was the president of Hot Government. Honest, open, transparent. A Wisconsin watchdog group focused on election integrity. Harry had been watching the 2020 controversy closely. He had been listening to the claims coming from the Wisconsin Elections Commission, the WEC, that Wisconsin's elections were airtight, bulletproof, the most safe and secure in the nation. Harry Wait didn't believe it, and he had a specific reason. Wisconsin, like many states, had implemented an online absentee ballot request system, accessible through a portal called MyVote.com. On its face, it seemed like a convenience tool. Voters could go online and request their absentee ballots be mailed to them without ever having to contact a clerk or show up in person. But Harry Wait had spotted something that to him looked less like a convenience and a lot more like a wide-open door for fraud. The system, he believed, had almost no real safeguards. It relied on the honor system. You entered a voter's name, their date of birth, their address, basic information that is not particularly hard to find, and the system would mail a ballot to an address of your choosing. No verification, no confirmation to the voter, no failsafe. Harry Wait believed that anyone could request a ballot in someone else's name, have it sent to a different address, and the real voter would never know. He decided to prove it. July 26th, 2022. The Racine County Fair. Harry Wait's organization, Hot Government, had a booth at the fair. He was there talking to citizens, answering questions, doing what watchdog groups do. And then Harry Wait sat down in front of a laptop. He pulled up MyVote, MyVote.com, Wisconsin's official voter portal. He turned on a camera and he started recording. He entered the personal information of Robin Voss, Speaker of the Wisconsin State Assembly, and requested an absentee ballot to be sent to Harry Wait's own address. Then he did it again. He entered the information of Racine Mayor Corey Mason and requested his ballot too. He checked the boxes. He clicked the buttons. The system accepted it without question. He posted the video to the internet, not in secret, not on some fringe platform, publicly, for everyone to see. Because Harry Wait wasn't trying to steal an election. He was trying to prove that someone else could. And then he did something that you simply do not see from people with criminal intent. He walked the ballots, when they arrived, straight to the Racine County Sheriff's Office. He knocked on the door. He told law enforcement exactly what he had done and why. He handed over the evidence. Sheriff Christopher Schmarling listened. And to his credit, Schmarling didn't charge Wait. He didn't arrest him. Instead, the sheriff called on the Wisconsin Elections Commission to remove the vulnerability from their website. That should have been the end of the story. A citizen identifies a flaw. He proves it exists. He reports it to law enforcement. The system gets fixed. That's how a healthy democracy is supposed to work. But that is not what happened. The Wisconsin Elections Commission, the very agency whose system had been exposed, filed a complaint. The Wisconsin Department of Justice took it up, and Harry Wait, the man who had handed over the ballots, who had recorded himself openly, who had reported himself to law enforcement, was charged with 2 felonies for misappropriating identification information, 2 misdemeanors for election fraud. Let that land. The man who exposed a potential mechanism for election fraud was charged with election fraud.
Jason Calvi was there for the surprise in court, and he joins us live. Jason?
Well, Ted, former Supreme Court Justice Michael Galeman says he's temporarily serving this defendant to try to help him get a long-term lawyer. Harry Wait admits to requesting absentee ballots for Racine Mayor Corey Mason and Assembly Speaker Robin Voss. Wait's no longer representing himself, at least this once. That job is for former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman.
It seems to me that Mr. Wait has been entirely forthright, honest, and transparent throughout this proceeding. And I want to make sure that all of his legal rights are safeguarded.
They're going to raise issues with you representing somebody who's accused of...
My critics would raise issues if the sun rises from the east and sets in the west, so I'm not too concerned about.
Now, Speaker Voss hired Gableman to investigate the 2020 election. It went on for 14 months, but then this last August, Gableman endorsed Voss's primary opponent. When Voss won that primary, he then fired Gableman, saying Gableman was an embarrassment to the state.
In court, the prosecution's own investigator, a special agent with the Wisconsin DOJ's Division of Criminal Investigation, confirmed the following on the stand. Harry Wait had not tried to hide what he did. He made videos. He posted them publicly. He told the sheriff. He handed over the ballots. The investigator also confirmed that Wait had told him, directly, that he did not have the permission of Voss or Mason to request their ballots. Wait called both men scofflaws, people who flout the law, people who consider themselves above it. And so Harry Wait's defense was simple, and it was consistent from the very beginning. He never used the ballots. He never intended to. He exposed a flaw. That is not a crime. The legal process ground on. Months turned into years. And somewhere along the way, the Wisconsin Department of Justice began to realize something uncomfortable. This case could become a problem. Because if Harry Wait goes to trial, if he actually gets his day in court, the Wisconsin Elections Commission has to show up. Their processes have to be examined. Their safeguards, or lack thereof, have to be explained under oath. And the question hanging over the entire proceeding would be impossible to ignore. If the system was so safe and secure, how did Harry Wait just walk in and break it in 30 minutes at a county fair booth? So the DOJ offered a deal. Plead to a misdemeanor. The felonies disappear. It all goes away quietly. Harry Wait looked at that offer, and he said no.
We're looking forward to having our day in court.
He said no because a misdemeanor plea is still an admission. It still says, I did something wrong. And Harry Wait does not believe he did anything wrong. He said no because the Wisconsin Elections Commission has been claiming for years that their elections are the most safe and secure ever conducted. And Harry Wait wants them to have to prove it in a courtroom, under oath, in front of the public. He said no because someone has to. Here are moments in history, small moments, quiet moments, where ordinary people make a decision that ends up meaning something larger than themselves. Harry Wait, sitting at that county fair booth with a laptop, was one of those moments. Harry Wait turning down that deal was another. Step back and look at the landscape today. Michael Gableman, who dared to question the 2020 election and recommend decertification, faced proceedings that cost him his law license for 3 years. The man who told the truth about what he found is being systematically stripped of his professional standing. Robin Voss, who called the investigation he commissioned the worst mistake of his career, is retiring. He won't have to answer for any of it. The mainstream media, which breathlessly covered every development when it seemed like these stories would go away quietly, has gone largely silent now that the questions refuse to die. The Wisconsin Elections Commission, the body at the center of this entire controversy, is now facing a lawsuit from the Department of Justice, not the state DOJ, the federal one. Voting machines across the country are being scrutinized as never before. Election integrity has gone from a fringe concern to a mainstream debate in state legislatures, courtrooms, and kitchen tables across America. And in the middle of all of it, in a county courthouse in Racine, Wisconsin, Harry Wait is still standing, still fighting, still refusing to take the easy way out. It's worth pausing to think about what it actually takes to do what Gableman and Wait have done. These are not men without something to lose. Gableman built a career on the bench of the highest court in Wisconsin. He had a reputation, a standing in the legal community, a life beyond this fight. And when he was given every opportunity to soften his findings, to hedge, to produce a report that would satisfy Voss and disappear without controversy, he chose instead to say what he actually found. And it cost him. Harry Wait runs a small watchdog organization. He's not a politician. He doesn't have a legal team on retainer. He doesn't have institutional backing or financial resources designed to outlast a years-long prosecution. He has his conviction. He has the video he made at that fair booth. And he has the truth of what he found. Both men were offered exits. Both men declined. That is not nothing. In a world where powerful institutions have every tool at their disposal, prosecution, media pressure, professional sanction, public humiliation, it takes something rare to stand in the fire and not move. Call it stubbornness if you want. History tends to call it something else. The trial of Harry Wait is scheduled for March 23rd and 24th, 2026, Racine, Wisconsin, the Law Enforcement Center. 2 days in a courtroom that could determine whether a citizen who exposed a vulnerability in the election system goes to prison or walks free, and forces a reckoning that Wisconsin's political establishment has been desperate to avoid. Make no mistake about what is on trial here. Yes, Harry Wait is on trial. But so is the Wisconsin Elections Commission. So is the question of whether a citizen has the right to test a government system and expose its weaknesses without being criminally prosecuted for it. So is the question of whether the most powerful institutions in this state can weaponize the justice system to silence people who embarrass them. Patriots from across Wisconsin are being called to be present at that courthouse on those 2 days. Not to disrupt, not to threaten, not to intimidate, but to witness. To fill those gallery seats and send a message to everyone in that courtroom, the judge, the jury, the prosecutors, and every bureaucrat from the Wisconsin Elections Commission who thought this would all just quietly go away, that the people of this state are paying attention, that they have not forgotten, that they are not going away. We live in a time when the truth is a dangerous thing to tell. When a former Supreme Court justice can have his career dismantled for saying what an investigation actually found. When a citizen can expose a gaping hole in the election system, hand-deliver the evidence to law enforcement and be charged with a felony for it. When deals are offered in quiet rooms to make uncomfortable, questions disappear forever. But here is what the powerful have always underestimated. The truth does not require their permission to exist. Michael Gableman told it. Harry Wait proved it. And on March 23rd and 24th in a courthouse in Racine, Wisconsin, the truth is going to get its day in court. Be there.